I don't think so, Bev. It's a kind of an ad hoc swansong thought that's come from the Navy Secretary. It's not clear that it even has the endorsement of the acting Secretary of the Defence Department. And they have, 6 weeks left in office. The proposal is unfunded, has no detail. For example, he suggested perhaps basing it in Singapore, perhaps somewhere else. That's not exactly a detailed plan. So you've got that problem. It's not a well-established concept. And then you've got the fact that the incoming administration, the woman most likely to be the Defence Secretary, Michelle Flournoy, has signalled two big priorities. One is that the defence budget will have to be cut. That's the expectation. And the second big priority is that to do so, and at the same time increasing lethality against China, she has proposed no more so-called, what she calls legacy platforms, known to you and me as ships and planes, and instead an emphasis on hypersonic flight, missiles and other types of what would have been regarded as asymmetric warfare until recently. So none of that bodes well for this suggestion, which has now come at the last sort of death knock from the Trump administration.
What does it mean, though, for what the Biden administration's view might be to managing the threat of China in the region?
Well, Michelle Flournoy's proposal, and she's written a couple of detailed, quite instructive pieces in American journals in the last few months. If she in fact gets the job, her essential concept is that the US has lost its credible ability to wipe out China's Navy in 72 hours, but that is the capability which the US under Biden would seek to restore. Her thesis is that if the US can establish that capability to, at the outset, almost sort of first salvo of a war, destroy all of China's fleet, which would be a formidable task because it now has more ships and submarines than the US itself. Then, once that's done, assuming that's done, the US's nuclear capability and nuclear superiority then asserts itself. America wins. So her strategy, her thinking is very aggressive in the sense of arming and equipping and preparing. The other clue we get, Bev, is the incoming National Security Advisor, Anthony Blinken, who would be who has been named as Biden's choice as his National Security Advisor, who's come out strongly in a message overnight where he said that the US under Biden would seek to rally the US and its allies to support Australia in its confrontation with China, which is a pretty positive signal for a Canberra that's feeling under pressure.
Indeed, a very positive signal, but understandably then too, Australia would be expected to continue to lock itself in with the United States. Now, where is that going to leave China's view of us, which is exactly that, we are a lackey of the United States?
Well, realistically, people for years, Bev, they would say, Australia's got to make this fateful choice between the US or China, and now that moment is upon us. Well, in truth, Australia made that choice many years ago as a US ally and has stuck with it. Everything that Australia does in its intelligence system and its defence system is structured to fit with the US, including our ultimate guarantee, which is the nuclear umbrella, which is a US nuclear umbrella that we shelter under. Remember, China does have nuclear weapons, nuclear missiles, which it's been building up. It had 50 for the entire Cold War era. It's now building up over 200. So for all those reasons, Australia is already entrenched in the US alliance. The question wasn't really whether Australia was going to rethink its position, it was whether Trump was going to kick Australia and everybody else out of alliances with the US. That phase is now past. And I think it's safe to say that the Chinese aggression that we see it is only reinforcing Australia's need and anxiety to cling tightly to the US alliance as a protection.
Meanwhile, we have to endure a contempt from China and damaging business relations. Do you feel Scott Morrison needs to pull back from the rhetoric that we continue to get thrown at us by China that we've seen this week?
Well, broadly, the federal government in Australia has been pretty calm in recent months and have avoided any big rhetorical flourishes. The exception, obviously, came this week in the response we saw from Scott Morrison to that just juvenile piece of crass propaganda that was designed to provoke, that we saw from the Chinese Foreign Affairs spokesman.
And we took the bait. Yeah, and we took the bait.
He took the bait. Now, as you know, Bev, Beijing would count that score one for us because they would call that establishing discourse control. Discourse control is very important in their system of managing the climate of ideas, and it's been effective because we've spent the whole week talking about it.
Yeah, indeed.
So they chalk that up as a win. On the other hand, of course, that has also managed to unify the Australian Parliament and political system like nothing else.
How low can this relationship go, though?
Well, so this was an escalation, or if we're talking about low versus high, this was a new low, because this took. So far, the essence of the downgrade had been a political freeze on contacts, trade sanctions mounting, and now they've added this just sheer insulting nonsense, which is not the way any nation state really, although Donald Trump did lower the standard, even by Donald Trump's standard, that thing was pretty low grade. I call it ISIS grade disinformation and shock propaganda. It can get worse, and it probably, I would suggest, will get worse because Xi Jinping has decided that this is the moment, this is the strategic opportunity to try and make Australia crack, to crack Australia's will and to force us to kowtow. He's decided that not only because of the state of disarray in the world, but also because of the state of political division in the US, the transition going on in their administration, that there's just a general period of global confusion and Chinese dominance that he can assert. So he'll continue until he thinks it's not working or some larger contingency comes up to require his attention.
Good to talk as always, Peter. Thanks so much.
Pleasure, Bev.